Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching OneMindSyndicate. Today we continue talking about Nurgle as we get into the great Unclean Ones. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day, and if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. Link in the description if you want to support. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the great Unclean One. A great Unclean One is a grotesque greater demon of the plague god Nurgle, the chaos god of disease, death, and decay. They are amongst Grandfather Nurgle's greatest servants, bearers of his most sacred plagues and poxes. These monsters are squat and mountainous, covered in rotting flesh and open sores that weep foul rivers of pus. Hot ropes of intestines drip out of huge tears in their enormous, bloated, and distended bellies. This horrific girth is supported by two impossibly small and atrophied-looking legs, and their large, bulbous heads are crowned by enormous, stag-like antlers. To a mortal's eyes, these greater demons of Nurgle are undoubtedly the foulest of all the demonic servants of the ruinous powers. Each of these great unclean ones is shaped in the fashion of Nurgle himself, fly-blown, maggot-ridden innards spilling into view through the tears and gashes in his swollen belly as he lumbers forward. Clusters of pus are always erupting from his hide, birthing small swarms of giggling Nurglings, noxious juices seeping from dozens of infected sores, leaving a glistening trail of mucus in the great unclean one's wake. Few mortals have the stomach, let alone the will, to oppose such a being. Great unclean ones are seldom deathlike or morbid in character. In fact, they are usually motivated by the same trivial enthusiasm that drives the living. They are gregarious and even sentimental in their nature, with a remarkable fondness for their followers. They often refer to their followers as their children, and take great pride in their appearance and oddly endearing behavior. It is not uncommon for great unclean ones to compete amongst themselves in the matter of spreading Nurgle's plaguesome blessings across the galaxy. They take pride in the achievements of their fellow servants of Nurgle, proclaiming joyfully the splendors of the poxes and sores evidenced by those around them, and laugh heartily at the death and destruction created in the name of Nurgle. Their appearance on the mortal plane is heralded with an ear-shattering howl of glee as they burst through the veil of reality, delighted to walk upon real space once again, spreading their bounty of plagues upon mortals. Often disease and desolation on a planetary scale herald their arrival, as entire populations are stricken with corruption of the Plague Lord's favorite plague, which is known as Nurgle's rot. This disease is the most contagious and most heinous of all sicknesses, poxes, and fevers Father Nurgle has ever conceived. The afflicted mortals slowly suffer as the plague ravages their bodies, turning them into bloated, rotting, living corpses before they succumb to their inevitable agonizing demise. The bile-slick great unclean one then waddles through the collapsed cities and mounds of dying, happily bestowing his blessings, borne aloft on a living tide of Nurglings. Driven to coordinate Nurgle's chaotic endeavors, a great unclean one seeks to instill purpose and function in the demonic legions under his command. Globules of yellow-green spit fly from his mouth as the great unclean one urges his minions onward. With grumbles, the greater demon harries those who are tardy in advancing, or who seem less energetic in the pursuit of the goals of Grandfather Nurgle. The love of their minions fill a great unclean one with joy, but they are consumed with indignation when a foe seeks to thwart Nurgle, and this escalates to rage when his underlings are harmed. When roused to war, a great unclean one is a terrifying sight to behold. Though ponderous, they are but unstoppable on the advance, shrugging off the bolts and blades of the foe as though they were nothing but bothersome insects. Aided by the momentum of his charge, a great unclean one will throw his immense bulk upon the victim with all the force it can muster, the selfless act of generosity warming its rotten heart. Those that survive the charge are met with a combination of diseased plague flails, iron-bladed bile swords, filth-encrusted bile blades, and rusted doomsday bells. It is not physical attacks alone that make a great unclean one so dangerous. By breathing deeply on the festering powers of the warp, he can summon a pestilent wind to wither his foes, vomit forth streaming tides of filth, maggots, and mucus, or bless his underlings with new tumorous growths that cover the worst of wounds. If threatened with bodily harm, the thousands of diminutive Nurglings that follow in the greater demon's wake will attack an unwary opponent, dragging them down in a murderous wave the instant their father is attacked. Naturally born carrion creatures, numbering in the thousands, gather around the greater demon to protect it and trail in its wake. Hordes of sky-blackening flies, rats, vultures, crows, and worms inevitably follow a great unclean one's passing. Great unclean ones long ago became inured to pain, a result of their abundant infections, plagues, and virulent sores. Their truly massive size and their ability to withstand almost any level of injury or pain make them dangerous adversaries, as they can absorb astounding amounts of damage before finally falling to the attack of their foe. These demon lords possess a hellish prowess which seems at odds with their bulk and squat stature. They barrel into the enemies, laughing boisterously, all the while laying out their colossal rusty cleavers and seven-headed plague flails. The thick clouds of flies, which feast at their open sores, disrupt the attacks of their enemies and spread the putrid diseases of their host. All the while, the cooing Nurglings form a hideous vanguard for their patriarch, and in a playful gesture, do all they can to spread their father's beloved plagues to all those nearby. One of Grandfather Nurgle's most beloved great unclean ones was Bolothrax. In the 33rd millennium, 3 imperial sectors were overrun by a vast army of the immaterial, referred to fearfully as the Demon Tide. Deploying into the demon path, 5 knightly houses, led by the renowned nobles of House Turin, formed an adamant bastion to halt the rampage. Using swift packs of Armiger Helverins and Warglaives, High Queen Desmadara Turin channeled the demons through the shattered valleys of Godsmod. As the warp-born creatures spilled onto the hallowed plains, they were subjected to thunderous bombardments by 24 knights castellans. The demons' casualties were phenomenal, yet with no concept of fear, they surged onward to exact vengeance. Over 600 Questoris-class knights stormed out to meet them, enduring barrages of sorcery, flame, and filth that sent towering suits toppling to the ground. With Queen Desmadara and her exalted court at the lance point, the knights slammed into the still vast demonic horde. They carved a path of annihilation to its heart, the ground shaking beneath their tread, unclean ichor draining their legs. Though empiric fiends and warp energies tore down one knight after the other, their momentum was unstoppable. At last, with Reaper chainswords howling and the Thunderstrike gauntlets crackling, the exalted courts of 3 knightly houses engaged the master of the Demon Tide. The battle that followed was so grandiose and catalytic that it spawned hundreds of songs, tales, and tapestries. Several heroic knights were slain by the enormous Great Unclean One, Bolothrax, before the Knights Valiant, known as the Master of Iron, and the Fellbreaker, successfully pinned the foul abomination with their thunder coil harpoons. With their quarry unable to move, the knights hacked the mighty demon apart. Bolothrax's banishment spelled the end to the demonic tide, though they wreaked much more destruction before they finally faded back into the warp. It was on that day that Bolothrax's unending grudge against House Turin and all the descendants was born. Later, in the years after the opening of the Great Rift, Bolothrax would gain his revenge. Amidst the swirling fury of the Damocles Gulf, High King Tybalt led the Knights of House Turin in their latest push against the Tau invaders. They struck the recently reclaimed Tau colony world of Shazet, formerly an Imperial-held planet known as Gazamere. Initially, the Turin offensive progressed well. The Knights were supported by a force of Raven Guard Space Marines, who scouted ahead at their advance and repeatedly neglected the Xeno enemy's rapid maneuvering abilities. The battle took an unexpected turn, however, as the skies curled into matted filth. Black rain fell, rotting all that it touched. From this filth rose the demons of Nurgle, led by the bloated abomination that is Bolothrax the Great Unclean One. In the vicious conflict that followed, House Turin sustained terrible losses, but the vengeful Bolothrax wounded High King Tybalt sorely and fell the knights of 3 of his closest blood relatives. It is only when the Raven Guard lured the Tau forces into contact with the demonic host that Tybalt's exalted court was able to spearhead a breakout. The mauled Imperial forces staged a fighting retreat to their extraction point, battling droning plague creatures all the way. They left Shastet to the frustrated demons, who wasted no time in making the Tau suffer. In another part of the galaxy, during the Battle of Hamagora in the early 42nd millennium, the Second Company of the Sights of the Emperor, newly reformed with Primaris Astartes battle brothers, in the wake of the reinforcements brought by the Indominus Crusade, found itself under siege upon the Hive World, assailed by an endless swarm of Nurgle demons. Intercessor squads established a punishing series of kill zones amongst the ruins of the Hive City, yet for every demon they slew, 2 more emerged from the dank tunnels of the Undercity, and their casualties began to mount. Operating in total secrecy, Strike Force, harbinger of the Grey Knight's 5th Brotherhood, teleported into the sub-city. Their quarry was the great Unclean One, Gom Gatol, who had turned the city's sprawling sewage works into his personal baths. Hordes of putrid demons crawled endlessly forth from the rancid gruel. After a bloody battle, a strike team finally sent the great Unclean One screaming back into the warp. Hamagora was saved, though the Scythes never discovered how. Within the pantheon of Nurgle's demonic children, Bauhjlth is one of the Plague Lord's most favored servants. This ancient, pestilent evil has plagued mankind for long millennia. Bauhjlth boasts that he even fought the Emperor of Mankind at some unknown point in history, and that not even the latter could kill him. Sometime during the 38th millennium, Nurgle dispatched Bauhjlth to spread his pestilence and plagues amongst the crowded hive population of the imperial hive world of Arius. Unbeknownst to the Demon Lord, he had blundered into a well-executed trap set by the Eldar. Led by their leader, Farseer Corel, the Eldar warriors dropped from the sky and attacked the vile demon in mass. Corel then began the necessary rituals in order to bind Bauhjlth, trapping the loathsome creature within the psychic construct known as the Black Pyramid. Unfortunately, the Eldar were interrupted when they were attacked by Imperial forces before they could complete the ritual. Aided by the Inquisition, the Space Wolves, and a detachment of Imperial guardsmen from the Gulf regiments, they assaulted the Eldar. During the ensuing melee, they seized the arcane talisman of Lycos. As the brutal fighting continued, the talisman was broken into 3 separate pieces, rendering its powers dormant. At the conclusion of the battle, the commanders of the Imperial forces divided their prize amongst themselves. 1 piece was taken by the Inquisitor Dark, the 2nd piece by the senior Space Wolf commander and taken back to the Fang, and the remaining piece was given to Commander Byrant of the Galt Regiment to be taken back to his homeworld of Galt. The Great Unclean One, Bauhjlth, remained fettered within the Black Pyramid by multiple layers of arcane warp packs, Eldar spirits, and the Farseer's powerful incantations. These intricate patterns only revealed their flaws once every 3,000 Terran years, when the comet Balestar became visible in the sky, and the Arius' moons were in proper alignment. While in prison, the Great Unclean One was still able to communicate with his foul servants on a limited basis. During his imprisonment, he eventually discovered the location of each broken portion of the Talisman of Lycos. The Demon Lord schemed to acquire these pieces so that he could free himself from his wretched prison. The return of the comet Balestar in the late 41st millennium heralded a dire omen for the planet. This coincided with a deadly plague that had struck the Hive world, though the coincidence was actually helped along by the subtle manipulations of Bauhjlth and his foul agents hidden amongst the masses of the Aryan citizens. Heeding the dire warnings of the Oracle of Charon, Inquisitor Ivan Sternberg turned to the Space Wolves for help in recovering the piece of the ancient talisman of Lycos, which could cure the disease-ridden planet and restore order. This was to be the first mission of Ragnar Blackmane of Barak Thunderfist's great company as a Bloodclaw. Blackmane was assigned to assist a pair of Inquisitors, Ivan Sternberg and Kara Isan, in recovering this talisman. The Inquisitors had come to Fenris to request the aid of the Space Wolves in reclaiming the Eldar artifact. Sternberg suspected that the Black Pyramid, a famous structure on the planet, which had been the site of a great battle of the Space Wolves, the Imperial Guard, and the Inquisition against the Eldar, could restore the planet. 1 piece of the talisman, kept in the vaults of victory within the Fang, was to be found on the planet of Galt, and the 3rd was lost in the warp aboard a derelict space hulk. Unknown to Inquisitor Sternberg, one of his servants, Commander Ghoul of the Inquisition's vessel, Light of Truth, was a heretic and a servant of Bauhjlth. Acquiring the first piece of the talisman from the Astartes, the Inquisitors and the Space Wolves set out for the world of Galt. When they arrived at the planet to recover the 2nd piece of the talisman, they found an Orc horde had invaded the system, and the Orc warlord, Gorg, had taken possession of the piece of the talisman found on Galt. Ragnar and his companions infiltrated the Orc Horde and battled against the Greenskin Warlord to reclaim the second piece of the talisman. Inquisitor Eisen then used her psychic abilities to discover that the last piece of the talisman was aboard a Space Hawk near the dead sun of Coriolis. Ragnar and the Inquisitor successfully recovered the final piece of the talisman after battling many dangers, such as Tyranid gene-stealers found aboard the Drifting Hulk. After acquiring the final piece, the group of Imperials traveled to the planet to use the talisman. When they arrived, they found nearly the whole planet had been already infected by the plague. Taking the arcane item to the center chamber of the Black Pyramid, before they entered the structure, they were warned by what appeared to be an Eldar spirit not to use the device. The Inquisitors and their Space Wolf escorts ignored the warning. When Inquisitor Sternberg activated the talisman, they unwittingly released Bauhjlth from his imprisonment, much to the shock of the Imperials. The gloating Great Unclean One recounted his tale of how he became imprisoned within the psychic construct, then proceeded to explain how they had been manipulated to do his bidding all along. Calling forth his minion, Commander Gull, to receive his reward for his faithful servitude, Ragnar Blackmane quickly drew his bolter pistol and shot the corrupt officer through the head, killing him. Inquisitor Eisen then boldly attacked the Great Unclean One with his psychic abilities, but Bauhjlth mortally wounded her. The Demon Lord reanimated Gull's corpse, ordering the Revenant to kill the intruders. Tapping into the power of the Black Pyramid, Bauhjlth began casting a grand spell of archaic power, animating millions of the planet's plague victims as plague zombies. Inquisitor Sternberg and the Space Wolves valiantly fought the Great Unclean One, distracting the loathsome creature long enough for Eisen to siphon the power of the Talisman of Lycos in order for her to seal the Black Pyramid, sacrificing herself in the process and trapping Bauhjlth within for another 3,000 Terran years. The Great Unclean One, known as Ulcare, has been a blight upon mankind since ancient times. During the 40th millennium, the imperial world of Aurelia was engulfed in a warp storm. The resulting turbulence pushed the planet out of its natural orbit, causing its environment to plunge into an unnatural and unexpected ice age. The world became entirely engulfed in ice as the temperatures plummeted, turning Aurelia into a frozen planetary wasteland, referred to by imperial scholars as an ice world. Much of its population died as a result of the sudden frigid environmental changes. When Ulcare manifested on the doomed planet during the warp storm, he was confronted by the chief librarian of the Blood Angel Space Marine chapter, Moriah, who managed to wound the greater demon before dying from his own mortal wounds. In an act of vengeance, another librarian of the Blood Raven Space Marine chapter, Azariah Kairos, defeated Ulcare, imprisoning the immensely powerful demon on the frozen planet. Then the warp took the world and Kairos along with it. Ulcare remained trapped within his prison for over 1,000 standard years, until the Black Legion Chaos Space Marines invaded the subsector of Aurelia in the late 41st millennium. Led by their thrice-damned leader, the Chaos Lord, Eliphas the Inheritor, a former Dark Apostle of the Wordbearers, who had been restored to life by the Chaos Gods to regain vengeance upon the Blood Ravens. The Black Legion was intent on releasing Ulcare from his imprisonment so that he could pursue his wrath upon the people of the subsector. When the Black Legion invaded the subsector during the events of the Second Aurelian Crusade, Eliphas and his minions captured several Space Marines and then sacrificed them in order to free Ulcare from his infernal prison. The arcane ritual freed the greater demon, as well as restored Aurelia to real space, enabling the Demon Lord to manifest within the disease-ridden bodies of the Plague Marines, which served as his demon hosts. Once Ulcare successfully freed himself from his imprisonment, the newly returned ice world of Aurelia was torn asunder. In the meantime, a Bloodraven strike force led by Force Commander Aramis was tasked with a difficult mission to defeat the Demon Lord before it launched itself across the subsector, threatening the existence of all the worlds used by the Bloodravens to recruit the chapter's aspirants. Before the Bloodravens could destroy the Great Unclean One, they had to first fail the vile Chaos Lord, Eliphas, and his traitor Marines. They clashed upon the world of Aurelia at the ruins of Keep Selenon. It was there that Aramis fought the Inheritor in single combat. Eliphas exhibited tremendous chaotic powers and unmatched savagery against the hated servants of the Corpse Emperor. The favor of the wretched Chaos Lord with the Dark Gods was such that he was able to call upon the personal blessings of all the Chaos Gods to aid him. Despite his formidable might, the Blood Ravens overcame Eliphaz, but before he could be slain, he escaped their wrath by fleeing into the warp. After Force Commander Aramas managed to fight his way through the remaining forces of Chaos on Aurelia, he eventually confronted the Great Unclean One. After a long and hard-fought battle, Oldcare was once again defeated and imprisoned as Aurelia was cast back into the Immaterium. But he remarked to the Blood Ravens that his prison was now inadequate and weakened, and that he would soon rise again to utterly destroy the Blood Ravens. Within the pages of the Ordo Malleus's forbidden grimoire of true names are listed the forbidden names of the greater demons of the ruinous powers. Amongst the list of Nurgle's most favored servants is the ancient and terrible Great Unclean One, known as Scabathrax. Through the ages, this incarnation of pestilence has been known by many different names: the Lord of the Blighted Pit, Maggot Spore, Wind of Nurgle, and Scabathrax the Great Bloated. This greater demon makes his home upon a demon world dedicated to plague deep within the Eye of Terror, within one of Nurgle's greatest demonic sprawling pits, called the Blighted Pit. From within this toxic, rotting pit of noxious and blights are spawned the foul creatures that Nurgle releases upon the universe. Only the most dedicated of Nurgle's followers can summon forth the Lord of the Blighted Pit from his home in the warp. When he crosses the veil of reality onto the mortal plane, he appears only briefly to spread disease and decay amongst the enemies of Nurgle, before returning to wallow in his beloved filth of the Blighted Pit once again. Mercifully, Scabathrax has only been summoned twice within the last millennium. Up until the second summoning, during the Siege of Vrax, Scabathrax had not been encountered since the contingent of Viriath over 900 Terran years earlier. This Great Unclean One is truly a horrific sight to behold when he does appear in real space. He jovially lumbers along, humming to himself and whistling merrily, surrounded by an impenetrable swarm cloud of large black flies, thousands of Nurglings clamoring over his mountainous bulk and scampering across his taloned feet, fighting for the choicest morsels of rotten flesh or a succulent postulate to suck on. Wherever this greater demon treads, decay blossoms, flora and fauna blacken, rot, wither, and turn to slime. The ferrocrete cracks and crumbles into dust and slime. Noxious pools of pestilent goo lie in his wake. He carries a massive, crude, rusting cleaver known as the Blade of Decay. When it strikes someone, it has the power of rapidly aging and decaying all it touches. Armored vehicles rust away into some junk, and the wounds of an injured become instantly infected, quickly turning the flesh necrotic as it rots away. When Scabathrax was summoned to the Imperial Armory world of Vrax Prime by the traitor legions of Chaos, many of his followers from the Blighted Pits, including plague bearers, swarms of Nurglings, Nurgle beasts, and all manner of foul chaos spawn and demon engines, were brought forth. The followers of Nurgle turned their attention upon Vrax Prime, happily spreading their rot and corruption, with the intent to turn Vrax into a new plague world for their patron god Nurgle. When this demon lord was confronted by Inquisitor Vokes of the Ordo Malleus, he struck the demon hunter with his fell blade, turning the Inquisitor into a puddle of oozing organic slime. Scabathrax was only stopped by the intervention of the Grey Knight Space Marines, whose hero, Captain Stern, brought the demon lord low. Once defeated, the Great Unclean One's spirit was sent howling back to the realm of chaos, returning to the corrupted lair within the Blighted Pit. Though this greater demon's incursion on Vrax was stopped, it did not hamper the demonic hosts of Nurgle from rampaging across the benighted planet, causing havoc and spreading their infection wherever they went. Not all notorious Great Unclean Ones are as ancient as Scabathrax. The foul Great Unclean One, known as Kugath, began humbly enough as a diminutive Nurgling serving Nurgle. He once sat upon the great shoulders of the Lord of Decay, as no more than a mite, while his master concocted the most virulent toxins ever created. Tumbling from his nesting place while Nurgle was mixing the noxious content, Kugath fell into the rusty cauldron. Taking a great drink of the filthy contents, the minor demon quickly swelled with power. Invigorated by the potent cauldron of poxes, Kugath continued to drink and drink until the cauldron was empty. The minuscule form of Colgath grew into a mighty great unclean one. Laughing with happiness at the antics of his new creation, Nurgle was pleased with Colgath and what he had become, the embodiment of the perfect disease. Realizing that his creator was not angry by his turn of events, Colgath soon realized that he had robbed the Plague Lord of his greatest achievement. Since that day, Colgath has sought to recreate the toxic miracle that birthed him into existence. Standing apart from his fellow greater demons, Colgath, now referred to as the Plaguefather, is a somber creature. He does not revel in the gurgling delights of infection and plague, for the Plaguefather is contemplative and industrious, forever traveling through the realms of chaos and the mortal universe, seeking every ingredient and sickness imaginable in order to recreate the perfect disease once more. Colgath moves across reality atop a palanquin carried by a mound of thousands of straining Nurglings, searching for the right combination of poxes and blights to replicate Nurgle's dark miracle. The palanquin is also loaded with the alchemaic paraphernalia of Colgath's mobile laboratory, so that he can continue to experiment and distill the procured poisons of millions of worlds in the furthest reaches of the ever-changing realm of the warp. To field test his creations, Colgath unleashes his virulent plagues during times of war, in order to test the effectiveness of his various concoctions, wiping out whole armies. In battle, Colgath hurls his pestilent Nurglings at his enemies, for the tiny demons grow within the Demon Lord, each carrying a unique blend of the virulent elements that created the unique Great Unclean One. With detached interest, Colgath watches each particular infection and their symptoms take hold of his victims of his field test experiments. Capturing those corrupted by his diseases, he takes them back to his lair within Nurgle's garden itself to observe them more closely. Thousands of cages, containing creatures of every known species from all across time and space, stretch into the darkness of his vast, ruinous lair. The victims of Colgath wail, gibber, and moan in the gloom, desperate for the death that will be long and agonizing in the coming. Colgath is not always seen alone. The great unclean one, known as Sepcticus 7, commander of the Sepcticus Legion, follows Colgath into battle within Nurgle's elite demonic plague guard. Sepcticus often carries with him the glistering stomach sack of some unfortunate creature with protruding hollowed antlers, on which he plays music as if it was some horrible bagpipe, summoning such terrible sounds that it exasperates even his fellow demons. During the later years of the Plague Wars, Sepcticus aided the Plague Guard in claiming the garden world of Yax in the realm of Ultramar. He also confronted Rubud Gilliman. During the battle, Sepcticus fought Gilliman, but was defeated, and his essence banished back into the warp by the Ultramarines Primarch with the mighty sword of the Emperor. Though Sepcticus' essence was supposedly annihilated by the use of this potent Imperial artifact, as an extension of Nurgle's own concoctions, it was still possible for him to be resurrected. His ultimate fate is not truly known. The only other great unclean one catalogued by the Inquisition is Radagath, often referred to as the Rainmaker, Rainfather, or the Generous One. He is a powerful, greater demon of Nurgle, and he epitomizes Nurgle's generosity. No one except the Lord of Decay himself is more attuned to the woes of the world. In their despair, the most defiant of mortals vow to endeavor onward, despite the utter hopelessness of a situation. Thus do the barren pray for fertility, the growers of crops plead for rain, the starving beg for sustenance. Radagath listens to each supplication, and to those desperate enough to pledge anything in exchange for their life, he promises salvation, and the Rainfather always delivers. His attention can best be seen on the agri-world of Ulden. When their beasts went sterile, they stood upon the brink of ruin. When the animals began to breed once more, the citizens believed their prayers to the ancient fertility god had been answered. Only when the wretched beasts kept giving birth, covering the ground in moldering, mutated newborns that shrieked to the skies, did they realize that they were actually praying to their doom. The Inquisition has even catalogued this malevolent beast attack the Xenos. When their hydrotech broke, the Tau Earthcast farmers of Duartan were so desperate for rain that they ignored protocol and gave in to the superstitions of the primitive tribes from whom they usurped the planet. When the downpour first came, it was welcomed, but soon enough, the entire planet became a full-tide swamp, rife with the plague. These floods of plague is what Radagath is known for. When in real space, he manifests Nurgle's deluge, a disease storm that eternally hovers over him, drenching the great Unclean One to his innermost folds as they wobble with thunderous laughter. Those foes that do not drown in his presence of Radagath's generosity usually find themselves crushed by his massive bulk. As befits his giving personality, Radagath has also been blessed with a fountain of plenty. He has the ability to vomit an endless stream of filth, a foul soup of blackish plague water, half-digested rotten flesh, and the most acidic bile of the galaxy. This liquid can melt ceramite armor and cause ferrocrete to rot and crumble. Disgustingly, the projectile vomit issues not only from his gaping mouth, but also from his belly maw. Random tooth orifices open up all over Radagath's thick body, retching spewic fluid that seethes with contagions. With such defenses, Radagath feels no need to carry weapons. Instead, he bears a gnarl rod, a branch from the hornbeam tree. Of all the strange and unusual plants within the Master's garden, the hornbeam is Nurgle's favorite. In a constant cycle, the tree begins as a seed, sprouts, grows to maturity, sickens with disease, declines, and dies in rapid fashion. Every time its withered corpse decays away, it reveals a seed from which the cycle begins again. With every rebirth comes a different disease that causes the hornbeam to die in some new and horrific way. The curled branches of Nurgle's beloved tree is a powerful symbol of his favor, and the ensorcerous wood is rich in regenerative magic. And those were 40 facts on all the great Unclean Ones. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, share it with your friends and thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do these longer videos. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. It's $1 a month, and that $1 a month goes a long way, so thank you ahead of time. Like I said, we're going to be doing longer videos from now on. Expect these conglomeration videos more often. I know that we started the channel with the purpose of having you guys paint while you guys watch our videos. So having these 40-minute long videos, 30-minute long videos, I think is more, you get more out of that than having short 10-minute long videos. But we'll see how long we can maintain this. Again, thanks to all of our patrons. It's because of them that we can do this. And really what we want to do is we just want to give you guys something to listen to while you guys are painting. But with that said, if you guys have any lore on your great Unclean Ones, hit us up on Instagram or Facebook, and then we can create a video for you guys. But yeah, thanks for everything, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwin with OneMindSyndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.